It's time for Takes on Takes, the weekly episode where we give our take on your take today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, I'll ask you the same question I feel like I ask you every year for the opening of this 48-hour limbo status where you can agree to contracts but not formally sign contracts. Who's going to be this year's Anthony Barr? If you're not familiar with the story, Anthony Barr agreed to terms as a free agent to sign with the Jets. And then like 12 hours later, because he couldn't sign, was like, oh, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to do that. And then he went back to Minnesota.
It's hard to pin that down, man. You know, like who's going to be the guy that's wishy-washy or something?
Yeah, just give me a
guy. Okay, I'll shoot my shot. My guy is going to be Carlton Davis out there talking about how he's not going to rush into anything, you know, wants all the money this time. Okay, that's who I'll go with.
And who was the Bills player that happened to? Was it a running back that was going to go to Carolina? Or was it a...
Well, there was, I mean, of course, legend Antonio Brown, Dree Archer, right. You know, we've had some of that going on. But, oh, no, it was a J.D. McKissick. Yeah. J.D. McKissick.
That's right.
What a career he's had since, you know what I mean? Really staying relevant out there. Forgot about him, you know? Good call.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that's going to happen. So it's like that meme of like the baby or whatever. It's like babies aren't always a threat to your safety. And then the ominous music kicks in and then he looks at the camera and says, but sometimes they are. It's like your free agents won't always turn tail and run the other way, but sometimes they will. Just keep your head on a swivel until pen hits paper on Wednesday.
Yeah, I got an 11-month-old crawling around the house. I think that is very hazardous to everyone's safety, to be honest with you. So
you get the wall outlet plugs.
No, we're focused right. Not yet. We're pulling bottles out of the like mini bar. We're opening cabinets. You know, we're kind of there. Well, hopefully
the door locks and the rounded corners for your tables and countertops
over plants, dude. It's insane. It's unrelenting. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
All right, shall we? Takes on takes. We'll get to a lot of the buzzy stuff that's been going down here over the last few days. We'll start with this one from Bub. Bub says, $40 million for Myles Garrett makes sense when you compare him to mid-tier quarterbacks. He affects a game just as much as Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, etc.
Yes, but I please provide your take on this take because I have a secondary Myles Garrett take.
I agree. I kind of was thinking that's what he would get. You know, I thought he would get traded and somebody would pay him that. I thought there was some rumblings out there that that's what he was looking for.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was a path to that happening in Cleveland, but it turns out the whole thing was just a big leverage play to get the $40 million from Cleveland. Because if it was about winning and getting away from Cleveland, well, he didn't take the deal, right? Especially after the owner turns down the meeting. It's been quite the transition there with the Myles Garrett situation, but right. Yeah, I don't blink an eye at $40 million for Myles Garrett. I think he's the best defensive player in the league.
I have a take around the Browns and Myles Garrett, and it's that 2 years from now, we will look at the Myles Garrett extension as a massive mistake by the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, Kyle, there's no question. This team is in no position to maximize anything that's left for Myles Garrett. It's directionless, right? The whole thing is not a good situation. That was the whole point. Like, Myles Garrett's a great player, but take this opportunity. You're going nowhere. Take this opportunity to get a bunch of stuff. The only thing you got is locked into Myles Garrett for this contract where, I mean, there's no path for you being a legitimate contending type team anywhere in the near future.
Like, what team in the late 20s or 30s would have given a 1+ for Myles Garrett? And then consider, like, I don't know, you use Buffalo, because I know you were like, man, if they trade Myles Garrett, like, I'd be real mad if the Bills aren't in on that one, right? Like, just use the 30th pick as the example. That's a 4-year contract with a total value of $13.37 million.
A lot of Myles Garrett's for that.
How many of that can you fit into the Myles Garrett contract that was just done?
Right. You're going to get more than just that.
But, like, if you also hypothetically got a 2,
you would.
That's a 4-year contract worth $6.76 million for 4 seasons combined, right? Like, the cost controlled element of where you're at as a team, where you're at from a cap management and cash burn and management perspective, where Myles Garrett's at as a player, what you could have got back, what the implications were like to like free that up where it's not going to be the apocalypse. Oh, by the way, you have a complete albatross contract at quarterback that you're restructuring down just to survive and get through, and his cap hits $42 million or whatever it is. And it's all money for him to not, or it's all commitments for him to not play.
Right.
And you got like
he's not going to play this year
into the future years as well. And you're going to stack this contract, another quarterback contract on top of it.
All the best.
It's crazy to me.
It's crazy. Oh, we get to kind of continue this conversation from Dwartzalini. Says the Myles Garrett deal just sealed the fate of Micah Parsons. He will not have a new contract before the start of the season unless it's with a new team.
I agree with this take. I've seen nothing from the Dallas Cowboys that would give me an inclination that, like, you knew Odigizua could play. You knew CeeDee Lamb could play. You knew you needed Dak Prescott. Those went up to the midnight hour every time.
Yeah. What
inclination do I have that this is going to be the one you're like, oh, maybe we should proactively get something done here?
Cowboys and Bengals, man. It's just harder for them than other teams to do things that should be pretty straightforward operating procedures. Price says cap space is becoming increasingly overvalued in the contemporary NFL. Less and less teams are letting premium or moderately talented free agents hit the market. Teams with the most cap space in the NFL generally don't have enough good players to spend it on.
I think this is true, especially with the cap rising in the way in which it is, which kind of like the spirit of free agency, right, is you're trying to promote parity and you're trying to promote teams not being able to hoard and collect enough good players to maintain the nucleus of their team, right? And when you have cap that's growing at the rate in which the cap is growing, and then you have these void year tools that are at your disposal that you could sign a player for a $40 million signing bonus and he's in the books for $6 million against your cap this year, it really does kind of, and not every year is as extreme with their free agent cycle as what this one is, but really, I agree with this take in a big way that, like, there is such thing as too much of a good thing. And if you've got $130 million in cap space, it probably means you don't have a really good roster and you're going to have to dramatically overpay to get people to come to your team. And then you're going to wake up 2-3 years from now and you're going to look at some of these contracts and you say, man, I can't wait to get rid of that one that we had to get this guy in here for.
Well, and then, I mean, obviously you take care of your own players, you extend them out. Those just become levers to pull, right? Like,
right.
Congratulate. I mean, I'm looking at all these contract extensions the Bills are signing with these young players. It's like, all right, great. That's a lever the Bills can pull next year with Rousseau or Brentford or Shakir. Just get more cap space while you lock in your young players. So, yeah, I think this is a good take. And it's certainly a heat of the moment with a team like the Patriots and all this money. Go ahead and just keep paying guys like Harold Landry because you have to.
Well, and we sat here and had, visions of Sugar Plums and T. Higgins and right. Ronnie Stanley dancing in our heads for the last 2 months. And they didn't make it.
Yeah.
So now the turnaround effect of that is the dominoes have the potential to have some contracts that may not age well for you.
All right. Tons of fun stuff to get into, including one from Joe at work next on the whole Seahawks situation. We'll get into that here in just a moment, folks. Be sure to stick with us. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can stay focused on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also that you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
You see this post from Jordan Schultz?
Which
the Dan Moore one?
Well, I saw some rumblings about Dan Moore getting like 18 million a season or something.
Jordan Schultz 2 minutes ago. One source said $20 million a year is a possibility for Steelers free agent offensive tackle.
That's just insane. They've been trying to replace the guy for 3 years.
Yeah, what do you round picks is Broderick Jones and then it's Troy Fautanu this past year.
Insane. Give him the Cody Ford deal, to be your 6th offensive lineman. Oh boy. Yeah, I guess that's going to be the Patriots. There you go. That's what that $123 million is going to get you. Dan Moore. All right. Joe at work says the Seattle Seahawks wisely got a high 3rd-round pick in 25 rather than let Geno walk in 26 and get a low 3rd-round compensatory pick in 2027.
I think if they pull off Sam Darnold, I can buy this. But if you don't pull off Sam Darnold, what is your answer at quarterback? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it Jackson Dart at 18? Does Jackson Dart now make it to 18?
Right. My take on this whole situation is I think Geno Smith is the epitome of an average NFL starting quarterback, and I think he's a ticket to mediocrity. I don't really think so much of Seattle moving on from Geno Smith. I think that's fine. Like, okay, this isn't necessarily a course that's going to take us to, winning playoff games and competing for a Super Bowl. But if the pivot is Sam Darnold, then I don't think you're any closer to an answer. Yeah. So I think that's where I get hung up on this is like, okay, move away from Geno Smith. I think more teams should be willing to do things like that. But all right.
So what's your pivot?
I guess my pivot is going to be to position myself for a quarterback in 2026. The challenge is that it doesn't look like that's the case. And it's, Seattle won 10 games. They have talent,
10 games,
right?
Lost the division off tiebreakers.
They weren't really the type of team that felt like, blow it up a little bit. That's where I get stuck on this. So like conceptually, yes, but applying it to Seattle and where they're at, I didn't feel like they were that type of team that was this far away.
Right. And that's where for me, like if you get an extra asset and you end up paying a quarterback in the same dollar amount, and he's a guy that has some long-term upside, like what a Sam Darnold maybe can be, but it's not $250 million in guarantees like some other quarterbacks got this weekend, right? Like what's the guarantees for Sam Darnold? Is it 2 years of salary? And then his third-year salary would hypothetically guarantee on a 4-year deal 12 months from now, so you can make a choice and maybe eat a year's worth of salary, or you roll forward for another year and then go from there. Like, at least you can continue to stay competitive in the window, because the realistic element of this, for as much as fans want the tank for Arch or blow for Joe or suck for Luck or like whatever it's been over the years, tank for Tua, like teams don't really, it's very rare for teams to actually do that. And Seattle, coming off of 10 wins, I applaud you sticking to your guns and kind of saying this is what our value is, and if you're not going to take it, then we'll go a different direction and take assets. But you think they're just going to tear this thing down to the studs and purposely be bad in year 2 with Mike McDonald after he just won? Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot tougher. They need a couple receivers, they need a quarterback, they need an interior offensive line. You got some stuff to figure out in Seattle.
Right.
Arif comes through with this one. I'm wondering if there's a punchline that I'm not aware of. Arif says big boards are the height of draft analysis.
I'm sure it's because he does the consensus stuff every year. I think big boards are the worst part. Well,
dude, I was the same way. I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to come in here and squash this thing. But I don't care about the list. I
would much rather, and I would much rather have what I say about the player be the thing that matters than trying to properly value or value relative to the league how those players get valued.
100%. I thought I was going to come here and like poo-poo on this. I'm glad that we're aligned because I don't really care about your list. I really don't. I want to know, what do you say about these players? That's far more meaningful. And even grading players, like, okay, this is a late first round grade. Okay, what does that mean to you? It varies from person to person. So I care about your scouting report.
Some folks like I know Greg Cassell's like, Greg doesn't grade players, right? It's like, here's my evaluation of the player. Use that.
Yeah.
Right. Choose to use that however you want. Apply it to whatever your team's needs are.
Yeah.
I don't think that's and I especially in my early years in trying to figure out the difference between valuation and evaluation, like my boards early in my career, like 10, 9, 8, 7 years ago, didn't score particularly well. Because that has been a lesson that I've kind of had to try to apply, because like I wouldn't adjust for injuries. Or like I wouldn't adjust for character and off the field questions because I don't know.
Yeah.
So what, I'm just supposed to make up a range of positions on a list to drop a player because he's got it kind of takes away from what I think the spirit of what the draft work is supposed to be, which is the evaluation of the player.
All right, next one here from Alejandro, spicy one. The Chiefs executives are the most overvalued front office. They have had more misses in the draft and free agency compared to their peers, but because they've won 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls, they were seen as infallible until this last Super Bowl. P.S. I'm a Chiefs fan.
I don't know about infallible, and I don't know about the most misses, but I think it's fair to point out they have had some big buttons to push to sustain optimizing their window, and they have not successfully pushed those buttons.
The Chiefs are awesome because of Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and Steve Spagnuolo, right? Those are the pillars of that organization.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single one of those people were brought into that organization by Brett Veach. Not a single one. Not a single one. And they can fill in the blanks around them because those people, for what they give that team is so meaningful. And I think they do deserve credit. They've been able to get a Creed Humphrey or a Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton's been a good player for them, and Trent McDuffie. They've been able to interchange a lot of things, but I think at its core, it's about those 5 people. It's been less about how they've done a good job of filling in the blanks around those people, but those people, the best head coach, the best defensive coordinator, the best quarterback, Hall of Fame tight end, Hall of Fame defensive lineman. That's what it's about, man. And so, yeah, I think it's a great take. And I think Brett Veach is over-celebrated. I'm not saying he's a bad GM. I think he's a perfectly good GM. But to act like this, everything that the Chiefs do, because the Chiefs do it, is amazing, we've lost our minds.
What do you think of the Bolton contract?
Too much? 15 per for a limited linebacker? Too much?
I'd have rather paid Sherwood that
100%.
Which he got the same. It was 3 years,
Yeah.
45. So he got effectively the same general terms. I feel better about giving Sherwood that than Nick
100%.
Bolton.
Yeah. Boy, they put a lot on. Why do you think they give up the most yards every year to tight ends? Because Nick Bolton's one-on-one with them in coverage, and he can't hang.
Right.
Boy, I love this one from Alejandro. Chris says, similarly to everyone mocking Joe Alt to the Titans last year, this year, the 2 chalkiest picks in most mock drafts are Colston Loveland to the Broncos and Josh Connerly to the Chiefs. My take is that neither of these picks actually happened on draft day.
Yeah, I'd take the field on that.
Yeah, he's probably right. He's probably right about that.
Here's the fun question. Does Colston Loveland make it to the Broncos?
He might not, dude. I feel like that's such a trendy skill set to acquire. To think that he gets, is it 2021, something like that?
20.
Might be aggressive. I mean, a team like the Colts, feels like a prime spot for.
What happens if Tyler Warren goes in the top 8 to either Jacksonville after moving on from Evan Ingram, and they have Brenton Strange as a young guy in that room, but like there's plenty of room for another name there. They obviously offloaded a lot of targets with what their offseason cycle's been like. The Jets at 7, New Orleans at 9. San Francisco have an eye on a Kittle heir. Miami at 13. Like if Tyler Warren goes in any of that stretch of 8 picks that we just went about, and then the Colts want a passing game weapon and they take Colston Loveland, like you might be SOL if you're the Broncos looking for for him to be on the board for you.
We know teams wanted to move up for Bowers last year.
Yeah.
And so it could be a more subtle move to go get Loveland. Everybody and Broncos are the team, that people are pegging. I could see this for sure.
I think Connerly's much more likely to be available for the Chiefs based off of the Rams bringing back Alaric Jackson, Baltimore getting the contract done with Ronnie Stanley. Those were a couple of big-time offensive tackle type destinations now that have those needs filled short-term, where maybe you're looking at Washington. You go from 20 to 30. How many teams really need a tackle in Denver, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, the Packers, the Vikings,
none,
the Texans, the Rams, the Ravens, the Lions, the Commanders? Maybe the Commanders.
Yeah, maybe the Commanders. Yeah.
And that's it.
All right. A loaded third segment coming up. A lot of cool stuff. Kyle, make sure you check your big board on your Syracuse players. We're getting to that here on the other side of it. Be sure to stick with us. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. You can also stay in the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's almost always something exciting to bet on. Plus, it's easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com. Get in on the college hoops action. Check out this deal, $200 in extra bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins over at FanDuel.com.
All right, I have my Syracuse board ready.
All right, we'll jump to that one. This comes from Cuse Kyle. Last time Syracuse had 3+ players drafted, it was 2006. In 2025, they will have 3 players drafted in the first 4 rounds.
And his name's Cuse Kyle.
Cuse Kyle.
You should have left the handle out of this. This would have been an easier take to shoot down. Now I gotta.
Well, who's going? Who's going in the first 4 rounds? That's from Cuse.
Kyle McCord, probably because of the quarterback tax in the draft.
Okay, but maybe not. Or Gadsden. I did a mock draft simulation, my first one over the weekend. Rodney Gadsden was available in the 6th round. I
would not be surprised if he ends up being available late on day 3 just because of the tweener element, and he bulked up to the 240s to go to the Shrine, but then he didn't run, and the separation numbers aren't good, and just the inline profile is not good, and it wasn't good at the Shrine even when he bulked up.
Okay.
So I think he's a big receiver. I don't think he's a tight end. I think he's a big receiver that is probably a big slot.
You're selling the take, obviously.
I'm selling the take big time, yeah. I like Jackson Meeks as a physical wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 who could probably play some special teams and do a nice job for you. LaQuint Allen, maybe. But
it's a running back. That guy's a running back, yeah.
Loaded running back class. I'd probably fade that one. It's a loaded edge class with Fatal Diggs. I'd probably fade that one. I don't think we're getting there in the top 4 rounds.
All right.
I think they'll have 3 names drafted for sure. I think all those names probably get drafted, but not in the first 4 rounds.
Ethan has a spicy one. Ethan says Ashton Genty is being way, way, way overvalued by fans and media alike. The hype is exactly that, hype. What am I missing here?
Based off of what?
I remember when I watched Ashton Genty. My first question, I think I said to you, was what's the difference between Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Ashton Genty? This feels like that type of bucket for running back. I can't even get myself to understand how he would be overvalued, or there'd be
presumably because he's not prototypical size or has a 4.3 40 time.
What do you think he runs in the 4.4s? I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I think he's in the high 4.4s. Yeah.
What's his size? 5'10", 212?
Yeah, he's listed at 5'9", 2. Well, then let's do NFL Combine.
I mean, those are perfectly fine numbers. I watched the tape. I see heck of a talent.
Survey says 5'8.5" to 11.
I like that. I like that
Short-
dense
short
build.
king, right? Yep.
Yeah.
You know how many yards after contact Ashton Genty had?
A billion.
You want to know the exact number?
Yeah.
Yards after contact, not yards after contact, 1,970.
How many backs had that much yards?
He forced 152 missed tackles this year.
Yeah.
It's just
I can't. Yeah. I don't see anything overrated about Ashton Genty.
Unbelievable numbers.
Just an easy evaluation, right? Sometimes you just watch a player. It's like, this is easy, right?
Bro, he did it to Oregon. He put 200 on Oregon. He did it at Penn State, despite the fact that he didn't have a lot of room to run against Penn State. Yeah, I think this is he forced 16 missed tackles against Penn State so he could average 3.3 yards per carry because they were just so overwhelmed in the trenches.
Matt says the NFL free agency should be after the draft. This would make obtaining draft capital a premium and could help teams from overspending in free agency. The draft should also be at the end of March, not the end of April. Stop giving teams time to overthink things.
I'm all for them overthinking things.
Yeah, I can't really think of a compelling reason why I would agree with this. Basketball does it this way, right? Where they do the draft first and then free agency.
I believe so, yes.
Here's the thing. I know we love the draft and it's a very exciting thing, but I think that the NFL's first obligation is to the veteran players. And I think putting the free agency after the draft would hurt the veteran players. And so that'd be my biggest reason for keeping it as is. I don't feel like it's a broken thing, and I don't like fixing things that aren't broken. Sam says Malcolm Kuntz ends up being the best value free agent signing. He takes a 1-year prove-it deal in 25, has a big year, and gets upward of $18 million per season in 26. Some of the projections are anticipating that now, off a year that he didn't even play.
Which I don't think it will happen. I think you've got too many edge guys that have gotten flushed into the market for the unknown risk of what his medical situation is for him to get that kind of money. I don't know. I would imagine he will sign somewhere with a decent base and significant incentive profile to get him to a competitive dollar amount. So I don't know that that's going to make it. Not to use the Dolphins example, just to use the Dolphins example, but like Calais Campbell last year, like the alternative of that, where Calais played for like $3 million and was probably their best defender for 3/4 of the season. Like that's a best value contract versus, well, we'll give you a 1-year prove it deal, kind of like the Chase Young deal, which what was the max value on that? I think was it 13 or 16 last year for New Orleans, but it was a 1-year prove it deal with like a decent base and then incentive.
1 year 13 with incentives. Yeah. Same thing with like the Marcus Davenport deal that. I think he could be a great value. I mean, to the spirit of Sam's take, good value signing that I think if he does the things he's capable of, he'll get plenty more than 18 million per in 26. Last one here comes from Kyle, not the Kyle on the show. This is what Kyle says. Everyone hates Mondays except these. Rank these Mondays in order. First day of free agency Monday. So that's the Monday we're living in. School holiday on Monday as a kid. Victory Monday. Or grilling Mondays like Memorial or Labor Day. Victory Monday's number one. Are you kidding?
Victory Monday's number one.
Right.
I think as a kid, you got a lot more emotionally attached to the idea.
Now they're terrible. Your kids are home,
Right. Yeah. But I think if you put it through the lens of a child, then school off Monday, holiday day is probably number 2 because it's like a win. So it's,
So the question is, do you enjoy a grilling Monday now more than a off school Monday as a kid?
Oh, as a kid, I think as a kid, just because you're a kid, that automatically goes to number 2. And then grilling Monday is 3. And then this is probably, especially if you work in the space, it can be not just very enjoyable, right?
Yeah, I got a wife who's already upset. You know what I mean? We had to we're putting kids to sleep last night. We get a Josh Allen contract extension. I got to go to work. These are hard times.
You got the time change element on top of it.
Right. It's been a
Kids
terrible
are all out
weekend.
of whack too. Yeah,
100%.
today's dead last for sure, but it's not a bad one for everybody else.
Right. It's exciting. Trust me, I love it as much as I ever have, but let's not act like it's not a very complicated thing to deal with in the world that we live in. So We'll take it though. It's fun. I'm excited about it.
There you go. That's takes on takes. We are reacting to obviously have a whole bunch of news that's going to be coming through, things that have already happened that we didn't even really get into. We didn't touch. Did DK Metcalf come up at all on the show today?
No, I heard he's a Steeler.
New Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah.
What are they doing with George Pickens? Because there ain't no way those two are going to coexist together.
Who's throwing him the ball?
Right. Those are the kinds of things we'll be.
I guess Ben Roethlisberger would like to get in on.
You saw he had his helmet on.
Hey, he can throw some YOLO balls to those guys, right?
Yeah, why not?
A little time.
Even Ben at this age, just hang him up there, man. Let him go get a couple Russell Wilson moon balls. Right. That's going to do it for us here on the show. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. Appreciate you guys as well checking out the show. Come on back, see us again tomorrow. We are with you all week long as the league calendar year opens up and the news starts flowing in. We'll see you then.